It was the kind of winter night when even angels turned away from the cold. Los Angeles slept under frost and silence until a knock shattered the dark. A little girl, soaked and shaking, stood at the door of a weary detective. In her trembling hands, a broken police badge and a plea only faith could answer. Beside him, a loyal German shepherd rose from the shadows, eyes burning like embers in the night. That single knock would pull them into a storm of fear, courage, and divine grace where love would defy cruelty, and a miracle would be born in the snow. Winter in Los Angeles was a strange thing. The city that once shimmered under gold sunlight now crouched beneath a shroud of gray, its usual warmth stolen by the ocean wind that clawed down from the hills. The air smelled of wet asphalt and old secrets, and even the neon signs along the subway entrance flickered as if the storm itself had found a way inside the wires. Down in the belly of the city, where trains screamed through the tunnels and the homeless whispered to ghosts, a small girl stood alone. Her red coat, torn at the hem, flapped in the cold air that rushed up from the tracks. She couldn't have been more than 10. Her dark wavy hair clung to her cheeks, and her lips were pale, cracked by the wind. In her shaking hand, she held a crumpled newspaper. One page, smeared and torn, but one face was clear, the tired eyes of a man with a cigarette, the headline above him reading, Private Detective Jack Harlow, Justice for the Forgotten. That was where she decided to go. The rain was falling hard when she reached his building, a narrow, 3-story relic wedged between a pawn shop and a laundromat. A single light glowed in the window upstairs. She hesitated before climbing the steps, her breath coming out in quick, nervous clouds. Behind that door, a man sat in shadow. Jack Harlow, 47, ex-detective turned private investigator, was the kind of man whose silence carried more truth than most people's words. He wore his years like a second overcoat, lined with weariness and the smell of coffee gone cold. His once black hair had faded at the temples, and a faint scar curved down the left corner of his mouth, a gift from a case gone wrong long ago. His brown eyes, though dulled by time, still held that sharp glint, the one that saw through lies the way a surgeon cuts through flesh. Beside him lay his partner, a German shepherd named Ranger, whose fur was a tapestry of black, tan, and gray, his eyes deep amber except one, the left, clouded over, a milky gray from an old wound. That eye gave him a haunted kind of grace, like a soldier who'd seen too much but kept marching anyway. The clock ticked, the rain hissed against the window. Then came 3 soft knocks, not the kind that meant danger, but the kind that meant someone had nowhere else to go. Jack's hand brushed his revolver out of habit, then relaxed. "Come in," he said. The door creaked open, and the girl stepped inside. Water dripped from her coat, leaving small dark stains on the wooden floor. Her eyes darted around, at the cluttered desk, the wall of faded case files, the old photograph of a woman smiling from another lifetime. "You're Jack Harlow," she said, voice trembling. "The one from the newspaper." Jack leaned back in his chair, taking a slow drag from his cigarette. "Depends who's asking." The girl swallowed hard. "My name's Maya Lee. I saw your picture at the subway station. My dad, he's missing." "Ranger?" Rose, padding forward silently. The dog's nose twitched as he sniffed her boots, then the hem of her coat. He didn't growl, just sat beside her, as if to say she was safe here. Jack studied her for a moment. She couldn't have weighed more than 70 pounds, but her eyes, gray, steady, belonged to someone much older. "The police handle missing persons," he said. "You should go to them." "They won't listen," she replied quickly. "They said he probably ran away." "And you don't believe that?" "He wouldn't leave me," Maya whispered. "He's a good man. He's a police officer. Officer Daniel Lee." The name hit Jack like a slow punch. He remembered that name, a rookie cop from years ago who had pulled him out of a collapsing building during a botched sting. Jack owed him his life. "Go on," Jack said quietly. "He told me if something ever happened, if he didn't come home, I should find you. He said you owed him a favor." Jack exhaled smoke toward the ceiling, watching it curl like ghosts of old sins. "When did you last see him?" 3 nights ago, she said. "He worked the subway beat. He said something strange was happening, people whispering in the tunnels after midnight, things he couldn't explain. He told me not to wait up, but the next morning, he was gone. All I found was this." She reached into her pocket and placed something on the desk, a broken silver badge streaked with dried blood. Jack's jaw tightened. He turned it over in his fingers, feeling the sticky edge. "Where'd you find this?" "Outside our apartment door," she whispered. There were footprints too, big ones, like boots. Ranger's ears perked. Jack glanced at the dog, then at the girl. "You've got guts, kid, coming here alone. I didn't have anyone else." Jack stood, pulling on his trench coat, the kind that had seen too many winters and too few victories. "You got an address?" Maya nodded, handing him a crumpled subway map. Red circles marked certain spots along the E line, one labeled Tunnel 17. "That tunnel's been closed for years," Jack muttered. "What was your dad doing there?" "He said there were people living under the city, not homeless, something else. He said they watched the trains." She looked down, shivering. "I think they took him." The rain pounded harder against the glass. Jack stared out at the city. The reflection of his own face ghosted against the storm. He'd promised himself he'd never take another case that involved kids, not after the last one had gone wrong. But promises don't hold long against the sound of a child asking for help. He stubbed out his cigarette. "All right, Maya, I'll help you, but you do exactly what I say. Understood?" She nodded, eyes wide with a mix of fear and hope. "Good." He grabbed his flashlight and holstered his gun. "Let's go find your father." Ranger moved to his side, tail low, but steady. The three of them stepped into the night, a broken man, a scarred dog, and a child clutching the last piece of her world. The city swallowed them whole, neon bleeding through the fog, the storm whispering secrets down every alley. Somewhere below, beneath the rails and concrete, something waited, and Jack Harlow, whether he knew it or not, was walking straight toward the past he thought he'd buried. The rain turned the city into a low hum as they rode the E-line toward downtown. The car was nearly empty, night shift nurses nodding off, a saxophonist asleep on his case, a pair of teenagers sharing earbuds in silence. The fluorescents flickered, painting everyone the color of old paper. Ranger sat between the seats, harness snug, one amber eye tracking every sway of the car, while the gray clouded eyes stared inward as if seeing something the world forgot to name. "Start from the beginning," the man said without looking up. The small voice obeyed. "A week ago, Dad came home later than usual. He wouldn't eat. He kept staring at the floor like he was counting something that wasn't there. He said the tunnels were wrong, like the air was holding its breath. He heard whispering around Tunnel 17 after midnight. He followed it once. The voices stopped. Later he found a phone wedged in an old vent, smashed. He thought someone was using the closed tracks. She touched the locket in her pocket. He said if he didn't come home, I should find a man who didn't believe in miracles but made them anyway. The man almost smiled and didn't. He left anything else? She unfolded the map. Red circles ran from Civic Center down to the sealed spur. Tunnel 17. She pointed at a penciled note. Birdwire, eye-watching. Birdwire? He asked. He said some nests aren't nests. The train hissed into the station. They took the service staircase. Ranger leading, paws soundless on wet concrete. The air shifted, the way basements feel when a storm sits on a house. They passed a steel gate marked closed by order of transit authority. The lock was new, the grate around it wasn't. The man jimmied 2 rusted screws. The grate flexed, they slipped through. Cold took the rest of the warmth from their lungs. Tunnel 17 sloped into dark like a confession. The beam of his flashlight found old warning paint, a cracked number, a tangle of cables sheathed in dust. Ranger halted, nose high, ears forward. He turned left toward a maintenance alcove, then froze. The light found it, a perfect bowl of twigs and moss tucked into the corner of a conduit rack. Only the twigs were plastic, the moss foam. The rim carried a fine mesh of copper. Inside, hidden under a layer of real feathers, crouched a lens the size of a shirt button. The girl's breath fogged. A nest that isn't a nest. The man traced the cable. It ran behind a plate into the wall. He pried it open and found the transmitter, a matte black wafer, the kind with no brand and no serials, the kind built by people who didn't want to be named. "Someone's watching closed tunnels," he said. "Why?" Ranger's head swung to the dark. A whisper of movement tickled the air, a shoe sole on grit. A breath caught and changed its mind. The man cut the mesh wire with his pocket blade and pocketed the transmitter. The whisper stilled. They listened hard enough to hear their own hearts. Nothing. He turned to the girl. "We leave. Now." They retraced steps, Ranger 10 paces ahead, then bristled. The dog's body turned to steel. The beam swung. A figure stood only long enough to register. A heavy coat, a shaved head, a jaw that looked carved with a knife. A second shape lifted, not a hand, metal. Click. "Run," the man said, but Ranger was already moving, a dark arrow low to the ground. The shot cracked. Concrete spat dust from the wall above the girl's head. The man shoved her behind a pillar, returned 2 shots into shadow, moving, not aiming to kill, only to make the dark reconsider. Footsteps retreated fast, echo multiplying them into a crowd. Silence folded back over the tunnel. The dog limped back, unhurt, just wet. The man exhaled. "You okay?" The girl nodded, jaw tight, eyes blazing. "He knew we were here," she said. The nest told him. "Maybe," he said, pocketing the shattered microlens. "But if he knew," he didn't finish it. They climbed out, night taller and wetter than when they'd gone in. Neon washed their faces like distant lightning. He steered them to a coffee shop that smelled of burnt sugar and late decisions. The girl wrapped both hands around a hot chocolate, as if the cup were a small sun. The man dialed a number he hadn't used in years. A woman answered on the second ring. The voice carried smoke and unfinished sentences. "Still breathing?" "Barely," he said. "You still chasing lies?" "Only the expensive ones. I've got one that looks like charity and smells like bleach." He described the nest, the transmitter, the sealed tunnel, the shot in the dark. "I need a look at who buys these wafers and who pays for closed-circuit bandwidth under transit authority lines." "That's not a public database," the voice said. "It's not a public problem." She paused. "I can try. I want the story if you live." "You always did," he said softly. He ended the call. "Old friend?" the girl asked. "Someone who makes truth expensive." He turned the transmitter over in his palm. "You said your dad heard whispering. What kind?" She closed her eyes. "He said it sounded like prayers said wrong." Night took more people into it. The man walked them to a narrow apartment building with light in a single window. 3rd floor, end of the hall. An older woman opened at once, hair white and neatly tied, sweater soft as memory. Lines around eyes told years spent reading small print and larger hearts. "I thought I'd never see you ring this bell again," she said. "You quit coffee yet?" "Just happiness," he said. The girl blurted, "He's helping me." The woman's gaze moved over the dog, then back to the man. "And who's helping you?" He didn't answer. The woman warmed soup, pressed the bowl into the girl's hands, then pressed a worn leather Bible into the man's. "I borrowed this from you a long time." "Ego," she said. "It kept my place while I waited." He ran a thumb across the cracked spine, then set it on the table like a fragile promise. The girl unfolded the map again. "These circles are dates," she said suddenly. He drew them in order. "The last one is tonight." The man leaned in. The ink around Tunnel 17 was newer, darker. Beside it, an arrow and 3 letters, HF. The older woman frowned. "Hale Foundation. They collect donations at the station every month. Warm coats, baby formula, cash." The man's face changed in small ways, the way a weather vane swivels before a storm. "Charity with eyes in the dark," he said. He pulled his phone, sent the photo of the transmitter to the woman with smoke in her voice. The reply came fast. "Your wafer bounces to a server bank leased to a non-profit, Hale Foundation Relief." Another chime, a picture of a man in a perfect suit, hair silvered with expensive time, smiling like mercy. A caption, "Founder Victor Hale." The older woman read the headline aloud. "A saint on paper." The man slid the photo away. "Saints don't hide cameras in dead tunnels." He stood, holstered the revolver, checked Ranger's pause, looked at the girl. "You sleep here tonight? I watch Tunnel 17. If someone comes, I follow." "I'm coming," the girl said. "No," he said. "You are the reason I can't do anything stupid." Ranger's head tipped, one pale eye on the girl, the other on the door. The man knelt to the dog's level. "Stay," he said quietly. The dog didn't move. "With her," he added. The dog leaned against the child's knees like a wall that breathed. The older woman put a hand on his sleeve. "You could pray," she said. "Can't hurt." "Never did," he said, and left before the room could argue. Back in the station, the city had folded itself into shadow. He found the same gate, the same grate, now re-screwed. Someone had been tidier than he liked. He moved anyway, flashlight off, letting his feet memorize edges. The air carried a new noise, distant, regular, more machine than wind. He edged closer, then stopped. Around the bend, a rectangle of light glowed and blinked off. A door, opening, closing. Voices, low, hurried, a woman's breath, a man's curse, the sound of something heavy dragged. He slid the small mirror from his pocket and angled it to catch a sliver of the scene. 4 figures. One carried a crate labeled with a white sticker and 2 letters, HF. Another held a tablet that showed a grid of camera feeds. One was this hallway, 7 seconds delayed. He understood the nest then. Not surveillance for safety, but early warning for traffic. One of the figures checked a watch. Load by 1, transfer by 2, gone by dawn. The door closed, the light died. He counted 60 heartbeats and moved. The mirror caught only his own dark face. The air kept his secrets. He found the door, learned the lock with an old trick, and opened it into a room that had never seen daylight, a tidy little kingdom of wrong. On a folding table, a line of cheap phones, each with a cracked screen and a sticker with a name. On a metal shelf, 4 more nests, unfeathered and ready. On a corkboard, maps marked with routes, calendars painted with circles. A photo in the corner showed a sealed room full of cots. The caption read, "Angel Den." He took pictures of everything, every map, every cable, every grave thing pretending to be useful. Then he pocketed one of the phones, the one with a sticker that snagged his breath. Lee D. The door hissed behind him. A shadow fell across the table like a curtain. "You're lost," a voice said, almost kind. "Or you're exactly where you meant to be." He didn't turn. "Tell your boss his nests are sloppy. Tell him saints should aim higher." The voice laughed once without humor. "Saints don't work nights." A click announced the gun. He turned just enough to show the mirror in his palm. Behind the man with the gun, another camera, another nest, blinking red. He smiled without mirth. "Smile for your donors." He blew the bulb on the table lamp with a snap of the switch, dove sideways, and the room exploded in white noise. Shouts, a shot, then 2, a crash of metal. He hit the hallway running. His feet found the way because fear had already memorized it. He didn't stop until the tunnel let go of him, and the surface air hit his lungs like a blessing. Night had thinned toward morning. He stood in the drizzle, phone in his pocket, picture of a room called Angel Den in his head, and whispered a line he hadn't used since he wore a badge. "Hold on, kid. I'm still coming." Somewhere above the city, clouds began to split like something had decided to listen. Dawn found coffee cooling on the table of the older woman's kitchen. Steam coiling from a wool scarf hung near the heater. The small one slept with the dog across her knees, hand tangled in a leather collar, engraved with a promise. The man scrolled through the cracked phone he had taken, fingers careful like the screen was skin. Most messages were fragments, addresses, dates, initials, quantities disguised as donations. One thread rose above the rest, calendar entries tagged with a single name, Relief Gala. The older woman poured tea. "You look like the night picked a fight with you and lost on points." "Night always wins on points," he said. He slid the phone across. "Angel Den, that's the destination. The pipeline runs through Charity." The kettle clicked. "You need someone who can make noise." "I need someone who knows which noise moves the right doors." He texted a number. The smoky voice came back. "If you're alive, meet me where the city pretends to be romantic." They met on a pedestrian bridge over the river, graffiti praying to things that had stopped answering. The woman wore a beige coat, scarf black as if strangled by its own elegance, long brown hair tied back tight enough to prove she meant business. Her eyes carried the kind of heat that melts lies. She looked the man over, then the dog, then the child, who insisted on coming, despite his no. "You brought an audience," she said. "I brought a conscience," he said. He handed her the photos. She took them in silence, the nests disguised as kindness, the corkboard map, the caption that turned the world colder. Angel Den. She exhaled. I chased Hale 3 years. Everyone invited me to stop. Sponsors, bosses, men with better suits than morals. They didn't fire me, they erased me. She lifted one photo again. But they forgot what I do with a camera. The girl spoke. They took my dad. We're taking him back. The journalist's face softened, then reset. Tonight, Hale hosts his winter gala. Cathedral Hotel, ballrooms and violins and donors who believe in clean hands. She looked at the man. You look terrible in a tux. I look worse without a plan. The plan became a collection of small thefts that, if arranged correctly, would resemble justice. The journalist called in a favor to secure 2 service passes. The older woman found a suit older than forgiveness and mended a seam that had held too much grief. The child stayed with a neighbor whose patients came in casseroles. The dog waited at the door as if orders might change. The city put on its evening face, gold where it could afford it, darkness where it couldn't. The Cathedral Grand Hotel glowed like polished sin. Inside, crystal chandeliers practiced their manners while waiters moved like quiet promises. At the center of it all, the man from the photo on the older woman's table smiled to the sound of his own legend. Silver hair, eyes like winter water, cufflinks, engraved with tiny crosses that had never been kissed by humility. He took hands, offered blessings, delivered a speech about hope. Hope applauded. The man and the journalist slipped through back corridors where hope didn't go, past catering carts and curtain ropes, and a harried event planner swearing softly at flowers. In a utility room, the journalist keyed into a temporary network that shouldn't have been there, but always was, fingers moving with the confidence of someone who'd made a map of other people's locks. She found the backbone, video feeds wired into a private server, labeled with a foundation's saintly initials. He's got cameras in places that require a sacrament to enter, she murmured, and a back hall that ends under your tunnel 17. She mirrored the feeds to a tablet and set a timer. In 15 minutes, the donors would see footage from the wrong room. In the ballroom, the music softened to let virtue speak. The founder lifted a glass. Tonight we honor the work of those who believe that suffering is a problem we can solve, if only we lift together. The screens behind him bloomed. Not a sizzle reel, not gratitude. Cots in a windowless room, shoes lined along a wall, a styrofoam cup with a child's name written in marker. Voices counted not in words, but in breaths. The room froze, $1 million intake of air. The founder's smile hung an inch off his face like something that needed a new nail. "Turn it off," someone whispered. "Call security," someone else said. The music tried to crawl back up the wall and failed. The journalist had her camera out, catching eyes as they learned to look away. The man scanned the exits and saw the soldier before the soldier saw himself. Broad shoulders, scar across the cheek like a line a blade regretted. Olive jacket under a tuxedo tops that pretended not to be there. Eyes that had seen enough war to understand that some battlefields are carpeted. The soldier moved to contain the leak and found the man in his path. Recognition flared like a match. "Get out," the soldier said. "You're not invited to this sermon." "You're not either," the man said. "And your boss isn't a priest." They stood very close without touching hands or guns because rooms like this banned both and allowed worse. "You don't know what you're walking into," the soldier said, something weary under the threat. "I know Angel Den," the man said. "I know the pipeline starts under a city that pretends not to feel the ground shake." The soldier's throat tightened once. "You know nothing. I know there's a child waiting for a father who hears prayers said wrong in the dark," the man said. "And I know you still hear the wrong prayers too." A security team moved in, a choreography of firm hands and soft voices. The journalist slipped out with her camera before polite ruin found her. The man allowed the firm hands to escort him outside. Because sometimes survival learns to nod. He met the journalist in the alley that smelled like old wine and newest lies. "You get enough?" he asked. "Enough to make half the city angry and the other half quieter," she said. "And Angel Den?" "Coordinates embedded in a calendar invite," she said with a small, tired smile. "Who says charity can't be efficient?" She handed him the address, downtown, just off Alameda, a grid of alleys that once moved fruit and now moved anything else. "You can't go in alone," she added. "I never do," he said, and the dog stepped from the shadow like a vow. They picked up the girl, who refused bed and chose battle lullabies instead. The older woman placed a hand on each forehead, whispering a blessing that smelled like nutmeg and old pages. "You don't have to believe in God," she said to the man, "but if you do, tonight would be a good night." He nodded. "Tonight I believe in doors opening." They drove toward the address, warehouse windows painted shut, tracks running to nowhere, a river that looked like it had lost an argument. They parked a block away and walked. The dog's breath steamed. The girl's small boots scuffed determination into the frost. The journalist peeled off to a vantage with a camera and a radio. The plan was a short prayer: get eyes on the door, count guards, wait for a change of shift, steal a way in, steal a way out. Plans like that dissolve or harden on contact with reality. Reality walked out the side door in a suit, silver hair lit by a security light, face bare of cameras, smile empty of anything but endurance. He stepped into a black car. The soldier came out behind him, hand on the door, head turned back as if listening to a voice that could still change him. He heard the wrong one. The car slid into the dark. The man counted, then moved, then stopped when the radio whispered, "3 at the dock, 1 inside the portico, motion sensors on the west wall, a vent big enough for grace." He looked down at the dog. "How's your crawl?" One amber eye glowed. The gray one dreamed. "Figures," he said, and smiled for the first time all night. The girl looked up. "We're going to get him?" "We're going to try," he said. "Trying's what decent men do when miracles are busy." The vent's grill came away with a sound like a quiet argument. Cold surged from the shaft, tasting of metal and old air. The dog went first, body low, claws clicking once on sheet steel and then not again. The man followed, knees protesting, breath shallow to fit the space. The girl stayed with the journalist in shadow, radio tight in both hands like prayer beads. The crawl opened into a void above a ceiling, a place where dust gathered to become geography. Through the lattice of a return register, light bled up from below, fluorescence too white to be kind. He eased the grate an inch and looked. Rows of narrow cots, buckets with lids, a table with bandages and cups, a partition of cheap curtains, a door with a magnetic lock and a keypad, 4 guards, one with a limp, another with a cough, 2 more making boredom into cruelty by talking about a fight that never happened. On the wall, a cheap clock moving carefully toward a time nobody wanted. The soldier entered without announcements, not as guest, more like an uncle who didn't want the job. He walked the rows once, eyes moving quickly as if collecting inventory, then stopped at the partition as if listening to a memory. The man watched the jaw work, the fingers flex. The soldier left without touching anything. The radio hummed, "East door clear in 90 seconds." The man slid back, pointed the dog toward another vent, dropped into a maintenance corridor that smelled like bleach and resignation. He reached the keypad. The screen glowed. He tried a code every sinner uses first, 1234. The lock stayed pious. He breathed, looked around, then saw a tiny smudge of ink on the edge of the panel, 4 digits written careless and upside down like God's sense of humor. He tried them. The door clicked. The room breathed back at him. He stepped in with the dog tight at heel, palms open, voice low. "Don't scream. I'm taking you out." Eyes turned to him that had lost the habit of blinking. A small girl clutched a stuffed rabbit by one ear. A teenager pulled her sleeves down to hide the map of hurt. The dog moved among them like a river that had decided to be warm. When he reached the last cot, the world narrowed. The man on it had brown eyes and a face that had been handsome before fear made it less so. The uniform jacket hung on a hook nearby with a ripped shoulder and a badge that understood weight. The man's lips cracked around the word. "Maya?" "She's here," the intruder whispered. "She sent me. We're leaving." "They'll kill them," the officer said, nodding toward the cots. "Then they'll kill her, then me." "Not tonight," the intruder said. He spoke into his sleeve. "Open the side hall in 3 minutes." The journalist's voice returned like a lifeline. "Security shift in 90 seconds. Dock door unlocked in 2. The intruder cut zip ties with a blade that had done this too many times. The dog stood between the door and everyone else, like, though sin might knock. Footsteps approached. The cough, the limp, the boredom now awake. The soldier came with them. His eyes met the intruders through the small window in the door, and something old stood up between them. The cough reached for the handle. The soldier's hand fell on the cough's shoulder. "Wrong room," he said. "Boss changed the route." "Since when?" "Since I said so." Authority had weight if a man carried it like he believed it. The cough laughed and went to argue with a soda machine. The limp followed. The soldier remained a second longer than he should, then moved on. The intruder exhaled something like gratitude and hate. He lined people at the door, quiet feet, open eyes, rabbit in a small fist. He put the officer last with a note that said, "If the world broke, sacrifice would be a choice, not a surprise." The hallway opened to them like a throat clogged with warnings. They moved. The journalist watched from a doorway, lens up, heart in mouth. The dog went first. The intruder counted breaths, his, theirs, the clock's. They made the dock in time to see Hope Park and despair get out. The founder had returned, silver hair perfect, coat expensive enough to plead not guilty. He had the smile back on his face, the one built for donors and juries. He saw the line of people, and his expression did an arithmetic. He lifted a hand, maybe to speak, maybe to summon a more efficient sin. The soldier appeared behind him, hand on his elbow. "Not here," he said. "Not this way." The founder shook him off like a thread. "You do what I pay you for." "You don't pay me for this," the soldier said, voice frayed. "You pay me to forget what I swore to be." The founder's face flattened. The mask got tired. "Then forget harder." The intruder stepped into the light. "He remembers enough." The founder's eyes slid across him and stopped on the dog, then passed to the officer whose bones tried to hold history upright. "You look terrible," the founder said to the intruder. "Grief doesn't flatter." "Neither do cages," the intruder said. The soldier moved between them because he'd stood between worse and survived. "Walk away," he told the intruder. "Take your saints and go." "They're not my saints," the intruder said. Sirens woke in the distance, bored no longer. The journalist had made calls when the screen went black in the ballroom. LAPD would arrive in waves, and not all officers would be friends. Time contracted. The founder reached into his coat and came out with something ugly and confident. The soldier's hand jerked, not to stop him, to precede him. It closed around the founder's wrist. Surprise blinked. The ugly thing clattered. The dog was faster, a blur of fur and will, teeth on metal, the object skittering into the dark where greed hates to bend. The soldier stood very still, as if each choice weighed 100 pounds. Then he lifted his palms and stepped away, from the founder to stand with the other sinners. "I'm done," he said to whoever wrote destinies. The founder began to talk, the way trained men do when money equals law, but tires screamed, patrol lights spun, orders became air. The dock filled with uniforms and intentions. A detective with sharp eyes and a braid like a line, drawn under an important word, took command in 5 breaths. "Hands where they can make friends," she said. She looked at the intruder, then at the officer. Something softened. "We've been looking," she said. "You made it easy to find." "It was never easy," the intruder said. He reached for the radio. "Bring her," he said to the journalist. And the small one came out of the shadow, as if waking from a bad dream, into a better one she didn't trust yet. The officer staggered 2 steps and caught himself on pride. The child crossed the space like a bird thrown by the wind and found the chest that used to be home. The dog leaned against both like scripture. The city did not turn beautiful. The warehouse did not become a church. But in the cold air between a father and a daughter, there was something that made breath easier for everyone who watched. The founder was led away with care reserved for the wealthy. The soldier handed over a small card from his pocket, the kind doctors sign and soldiers carry. "Blood type," he said to the detective, "in case you need the rest." "We need you as a witness," she said. "I figured," he said, and for the first time that night, his eyes looked something like free. The journalist lowered the camera, hands shaking because hands tell truths, faces hide. The older woman arrived as if Grace had legs. She wrapped the child and the officer in warmth not bought in stores. The intruder stood outside the huddle, as if joy were a room where he belonged only as an usher. The dog pressed a cold nose into his palm until he remembered he had one. Sirens faded. Paperwork promised to live forever. Somewhere in all that noise, the detective with the braid moved closer to the intruder. "You know this doesn't end here," she said. "It never does," he said. "But it's enough for tonight. Hospitals speak in beeps and near whispers. Morning laid a pale hand on the windows, and the city looked like a postcard someone forgot to mail. The officer slept with an IV doing its simple mercy. The small one slept in a chair at angles. People that age survive. The dog sat at the foot of the bed, eyes half closed, ears still listening for a trouble that might apologize and return. The journalist stood by the glass, phone lighting her face with the world's reaction. Outrage, relief, denial, donations, the whole choir. The older woman poured coffee from a thermos that knew how to comfort. "You should try breakfast," she said to the man. "You look like a habit someone should quit." He smiled without practice. "You prayed," he said. "Maybe God listened." "God always listens," she said. "We're the ones who forget how to speak." The detective with the braid arrived with a folder that could ruin or redeem a week. "Your founder made 50 calls before sunrise," she said. "None to a lawyer, all to donors who now remember it's cheaper to be virtuous." She dropped to a chair. "We flipped 3 more guards. One talked about a place under the river with a prettier name than its purpose." The journalist tapped the screen. Angel Den was the holding room. Transit moved people to a farm outside the county, then to trucks that changed logos like shirts. "We punctured 1 lung last night. The body will keep breathing lies unless we keep pressing." The man looked at the dog, at the child, at the officer waking like someone returning up a long staircase. He nodded. "Then don't stop." The officer's eyes found the child first, then the man. "I knew you'd come," he said, voice cracked. "She told me you would." "She told me you saved me before I met you," the man said. "Looks like I owed the debt to both of you." The room filled with the kind of quiet that doesn't need words to keep standing. A nurse with competent hands checked lines and left competence behind when she went. The detective gathered signatures, names spelled slowly, dates written carefully so the future could find them. The journalist prepared an edit with scenes that would live in court, if not in comfort. The older woman moved through all of it, singing under her breath. Midday turned the windows into mirrors. People arrived with questions dressed as sympathy and were escorted away with courtesy dressed as iron. The soldier knocked once on the doorframe and waited as if waiting were his penance. No uniform, plain jacket, dog tags tucked in, eyes raw. The detective nodded him in. "You gave us the lock codes," she said. "You gave us floor plans. You gave us something else, too." He looked at the child. "A reason," he said simply. The child stood, weighed 10 years against Grace, and crossed to him. She held out the rabbit with the torn ear. "For when you remember to be good," she said. He took it like it might, break and laughed once at himself because it already had. "You think it sticks?" he asked the man. "Being good?" "Not without friends," the man said. "Not without fences. We can help with the first. The second's on you." The soldier nodded. "I'll testify." He glanced at the dog. "You owe me a drink, soldier," he said softly, not sure who he meant. The dog blinked the 2-colored blink that made rooms gentler. Afternoon slid over the day. The officer walked with assistants to a chapel, where a candle knew names without being told. The older woman placed the Bible in the man's hands and said nothing. He opened it to a page that had been folded for years. The words didn't fix him. They did something smaller and braver. They kept him from breaking in the same place. By evening, the journalist's story went live. A headline that didn't demand tears but deserved them. Images of the room, the map, the founder's face as his myth misplaced its signature. Phone lines lit at City Hall. A warrant learned how to spell the rest of the addresses. The detective walked out and back in with news that smelled like winter air, clean and sharp. "They picked him up crossing the county line," she said. "He tried to pray to his money. God was busy." Night returned without apology. The older woman drove them to a small house where the heater worked hard and the kitchen remembered recipes. The officer sat at the table with the child across from him and marveled at how rooms appear around people when they choose to stay. The journalist left with a wave that accepted both thanks and danger. The detective promised to return with a stack of paper and a promise of protection that almost sounded like truth. The man stepped outside with the dog. The sky had rinsed itself clearer. Stars stared down like old witnesses. "You kept your promise," he told the night, not sure who he meant anymore. The dog leaned into his leg. One eye drank starlight. The other held a softer glow, the color of mercy. The older woman came to stand beside him, sweater smelling like cinnamon. You still don't believe in miracles? She asked. I believe in doors opening at the right time, he said. And hands. He looked at his. And dogs, she smiled. Then you believe enough. The child's laugh floated out from the kitchen, a small bell arguing with the dark. The man felt something shift, nothing dramatic, more like a tight knot, remembering it could loosen without losing its purpose. He went back in. Later, when the child fell asleep on the couch and the officer's head nodded toward the table and the dog patrolled dreams for anything that bit, the man wrote 3 notes. 1 to the journalist, don't stop. 1 to the detective, tell the ones who came that some nights matter more than others. And 1 to the older woman that read only, thank you for saving me in a language I forgot. He left the notes where morning would find them. He didn't leave the house. He sat in the chair by the window and watched the night argue with itself until it surrendered to a softer gray. The dog put his head on the man's boot, weight made of trust. The city breathed. A siren sang far away and didn't sound cruel. In the space between a tired heartbeat and its next brave choice, the man closed his eyes and prayed, with nothing but breath, and hoped somebody who had always been listening would hear. When morning finally spilled gold across the small room, it found 4 figures and a dog stitched back together by something not fully explainable. Justice done imperfectly, love practiced stubbornly, and grace arriving exactly as late and as early as human beings allow. Winter was still winter outside. Inside, a small summer had started. In the darkness and cold of Los Angeles, every soul in the story learned how to believe again. Jack Harlow, the weary detective, discovered that justice isn't found in courtrooms or the barrel of a gun. It lives in the small, merciful choices we make when no one is watching. Little Maya didn't just find her father. She found faith, that even in the depths of fear, someone would still step into the dark to bring her home. Ranger, the dog with 2 colored eyes, reminded them all that when one eye goes blind, the other must see for the heart. Sarah taught that prayer isn't about changing God's mind, but about opening the locked doors of our own. Cole, the lost soldier, learned that redemption isn't washed in water, but earned through blood and courage. And the city itself, with its tunnels and endless rain, bore witness as these broken souls stood up again, with one fragile truth. That light only needs the smallest crack to enter. The story doesn't end with a miracle. It ends with a choice. The choice to believe, to love, to forgive. When we dare to open our hearts, God walks the rest of the way. So, love once more, help one more person, forgive one more mistake. Because even in the cruelest winter, a single act of kindness can awaken a small summer inside someone's heart,